Lindsay McDonald-Boyer, and I'm here to talk to you about the famous scientists throughout history. The first scientist that I'm going to talk to you about today is Copernicus. Now he furthered our understanding of astronomy a lot in a time where astronomy was something that wasn't really practiced much. He developed what is called the heliocentric theory. It was that the sun is in the center of the solar system. Helio meaning sun and centric meaning the center. This was contrary to popular belief at the time that the Earth was in the center. This was called the geocentric theory, geo meaning Earth and centric meaning the center. This got him in trouble with the church because they believed that God had created us as the best thing and we were in the center of everything. Now, he wasn't uncommon in that he was in trouble with the church. Other scientists, such as Galileo, were also in the same position. Galileo was fathered with the idea that he had helped invent the telescope. Even though it might have been invented earlier, he was the one who really perfected it. He used it to spot Saturn's moons and to see the surface of Venus and also the rocky surface of the moon. Another scientist who was gifted with helping invent the telescope was Kepler. He invented the Keplerian telescope and used it to discover supernovas out in space. Another famous scientist you've probably heard of is Sir Isaac Newton. He's gifted with helping discover gravity, and apples are associated with it because the story goes that he was sitting under an apple tree when one dropped on his head. This is how he claims that he would discover gravity and that things would always fall. Another thing he invented was the 3 laws of motion. Isaac Newton's first law is that a body at rest will remain at rest until a force is acted upon it. His second law is an equation that can be used to find force, mass, or acceleration of an object. And the third is that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Another famous scientist who was very dedicated to work was Marie Curie. She was responsible for discovering 2 radioactive elements. Elements similar to the ones that are used in X-rays today. This is Albert Einstein's famous equation, E is equal to mc squared. It stands for energy is equal to mass times the speed of light squared. This is one of his most famous works, but he was also responsible for the theory of relativity, which was a huge leap in physics. His work actually led to the creation of the first atomic bomb. We all have light bulbs in our house. It's a pretty simple and easy thing nowadays, but we have one man really to thank for it, Edison. He wasn't really the first person to ever think of the idea of a light bulb, but he was the first one to perfect the incandescent light bulb. He was also in charge of making the first movie camera and phonograph. He also had an interesting invention that didn't really ever catch on. We always talk about the great accomplishments that scientists have, but never really their fails. Have you ever heard of the electric pen? Probably not. It was one of Edison's first inventions when he was starting out, but it never really caught on. What it was is it was a pen with an electric motor and a small needle instead of a tip that would have ink or lead pencil in it. What you would do is you would write, and as you wrote, it would puncture small holes in a piece of paper. This made it really easy to copy documents over because you could just write out the document, set it on top of a stack of paper, and run an ink roller over it, and you could make as many copies as you want without actually having to write it out. The problem was the typewriter and an improved version of the printing press were really on the rise at this time, so it became obsolete technology pretty quickly. It also had its flaws. The electric motor that it had would actually leak acid, and that was a real major health concern at the time. Edison was a great scientist, but there was some really shady rivalry going on with him and another famous scientist, Nikola Tesla. They both worked in the field of electricity, but the problem was Nikola Tesla had this new invention called an alternating current. This meant that the electrons traveled both directions, while Edison was very strict in his beliefs that he thought that the direct current would be the best, where the electrons travel in one direction. Now the problem was Edison thought that this new current would put him out of business because it was easily put into other devices and it was actually smaller. So what Edison did is he used an alternating current to electrocute various kinds of animals to try to convince the public it was dangerous. But in all reality, if he'd used a direct current, it would have had the same effect. Now Tesla also invented a lot of other things. He invented, of course, the Tesla coils, which are named after him, but he also invented something else that most people don't understand. He built a death ray. Death rays are really hard to come by. We had to improvise. But it was pretty amazing. He actually built this giant machine about the size of an observatory tower. He started actually to build it in real life, but he died and with lack of funding, there wasn't anyone to continue his work. The really odd thing is, scientists agreed that this probably could have worked, but the blueprints are currently missing. They were supposed to be sent to his hometown, but they were never received. So now there's blueprints for a death ray running around somewhere. Science has been a part of mankind since the beginning of time. We've made huge leaps and we've discovered so much. And as technology starts to become more prevalent in our everyday life, I think science will continue to skyrocket, and someday we might truly be walking in the stars.